Welcome back to Horror Recaps. Today, I will be showing you an American supernatural horror film from 1973 titled The Exorcist. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens up with Father Lancaster Marin, an old Catholic priest attending an archaeological excavation in Iraq. Marin is afraid and feels disconnected after he discovers a strange piece of sculpture in the area. Following that, he meets a series of bizarre omens, a clock that stops ticking in the middle of a stroke and a near-miss encounter with a speeding horse-drawn carriage. Finally, Marin comes upon a statue of a weird demonic figure, which is a portrayal of a demonic entity known as Pazuzu. According to Babylonian mythology, the Pazuzu demon is one of the most sinister demons. The scene then shifts to the United States' upscale Georgetown neighborhood, where a famous and successful actress, Chris MacNeil, begins to experience weird events. Chris shares her home with Regan, her 12-year-old daughter, Sharon, her personal secretary, and 2 house helps. Regan's father has a strained relationship with the family for unclear reasons. One night, when Chris is taking some notes, she hears a strange and mysterious sound coming from the attic of the house. She comes out of the room and believes it to be rats making the noises. The next day, Chris urges her housekeeper, Carl, to set up some mouse traps in the attic. She then heads for the shooting of her next movie where she is playing a character of a teacher. Chris complains about her script to her director, Burke, and he calms her down. The shooting is interrupted when a large crowd of fans come there to see Chris. After the shoot, the actress returns home and spends some quality time with her daughter. Elsewhere, Father Damien goes to meet his elderly mother who is overjoyed to see him. She is very ill and seems to require regular assistance and care. Despite her pitiful condition, she refuses Damien's suggestion to go to a nursing home, not wanting to leave her apartment. Later at night, Damien kisses her and leaves some money for her on the table before returning home. Back at Chris's house, Regan and she are enjoying their time together in the basement, when Chris discovers a Ouija board. She asks Regan about the board, to which the girl replies that she plays the game with her imaginary friend Mr. Howdy. Chris tries to play a game with Regan, but the pointer of the board moves away as soon as she touches it. Seeing this, Regan tells her that Captain Howdy does not want her to play the game. Chris takes it as a joke and just laughs it off. One night, Chris wakes up from her sleep because of a phone call from her director who wants her to come to work early. After the call, she is surprised to find Regan in her bed. When asked why she is not in her room, Regan replies that she is unable to sleep in her room because her bed is always shaking. Chris does not give proper attention to Regan's comment and walks out of the room. She again hears a strange sound coming from the attic. This time, Chris decides to go upstairs and check for herself, but fails to find the source of the noise. The following day, she takes Regan to the hospital for a regular checkup. During the checkup, Regan behaves strangely and abuses the doctor. Later, the doctor informs Chris that Regan is suffering from some kind of nerve disease, and it's the reason she is behaving abnormally. He also points out that the absence of a father figure in her life might be the cause of the problem. Eventually, Father Damien's mother becomes severely ill. Because of a lack of money, she is admitted to a rundown hospital and assigned to the ward with psychiatric patients. When Father Damien visits the hospital, he is disturbed to see her in such a miserable state. Moreover, she appears to blame him for her condition. Later, she dies under the same circumstances, adding to Father Damien's grief. Later at night, Chris throws a lavish party in her house for her rich friends. Chris converses with one of her guests, Father Dyer, who is also a priest. She mentions that she has noticed Father Damien during one of her shoots and describes him as an intense person. Father Dyer then replies that he and Father Damien are excellent friends. Throughout the party, Regan acts joyful and gregarious, but after being ordered to go to bed, she comes wearing a nightgown and pees on the carpet in front of the attendees. She also delivers a scary comment to a guest, telling him that he is going to die. After the guests return home, Chris bathes Regan and tucks her in bed, but later is startled by a loud noise from Regan's room. She dashes back down the hall to see Regan's bed shaking uncontrollably and lifting off the floor along with Regan. Chris leaps onto the bed to stop it from shaking and levitating, but the bed continues to do so. The next day, Chris puts Regan through a variety of medical tests in order to figure out what's wrong with her. Having put Regan through these lengthy, excruciating tests, the doctors are still unable to find anything. The closest they can think is that Regan might have a brain defect, but they're disappointed when nothing shows up on her brain scan. Regan looks to be having a seizure at Chris's house, and 2 physicians arrive. They are shocked to discover her on the bed, moving up and down in an unnatural manner, which seems quite impossible for a human being to do. Finally, the doctors decide to sedate her. As they attempt to do so, she throws them across the room with unusual force, yelling at them to keep their distance in a strange male voice. After continuous attempts, the doctors eventually succeed in sedating her. Since they do not have any other choices or a cure for the disease, they encourage Chris to seek treatment from a psychiatrist. The doctors also hesitantly address alternative possibilities, suspected demonic possession and the rite of exorcism. While they appear to have professional disdain for it, they do agree that it has been used to address problems similar to Regan's. Chris is doubtful about the rite of exorcism, as she has no religious attachment. One evening, when Chris returns home, she is shocked to find Regan alone in her room, who seems to be in a deep sleep. It is shown that despite it being freezing cold outside, the window of the room is wide open and that she is completely exposed. Seeing this, Chris closes the window and covers Regan with a blanket. Later, when Sharon returns home, Chris is mad at her for leaving Regan alone. Sharon, on the other hand, claims that Burke was in the house when she left to buy some medicine for Regan. Burke's departure goes unnoticed until the doorbell rings, and a friend of Chris's informs her that Burke has died on the stairs outside of Chris's house. Upon hearing this, Chris is taken aback. When she turns, she notices Regan climbing down the stairs inverted, on all fours, with blood dripping from her mouth. Soon, Chris is visited by an investigator called Kinderman, who appears to be investigating Burke's death. When Kinderman asks her about the incidents of the night, Chris is anxious and unwilling to inform him about Regan's condition. He discovers a few little animal sculptures that Regan has sculpted while he is there. The said sculptures are similar in design to the desecration of the church statue. After Kinderman departs, a huge commotion can be heard from Regan's room. Regan screams in protest as Chris hears a deep masculine voice yelling at her to do it. Chris is shocked to discover Regan in her bedroom, furiously hitting her private part with a crucifix. Seeing Regan soaked in blood, Chris attempts to stop her, but Regan pushes her away with unimaginable strength. The room's furniture also begins to move on its own. Sharon and others rush towards Regan's room, but before they can enter, the door is locked. As Chris stares in horror, her daughter's head twists around, and she talks to Chris in Burke's voice. Chris finally learns that Regan is involved in Burke's death. Desperate to save her daughter, Chris schedules a meeting with Father Damien, and asks him to perform an exorcism on Regan. He informs her that exorcism is almost unheard of and that he knows no one who has ever done it. Chris is distressed, but nonetheless, she tries her best to persuade him to meet with Regan. In the next scene, Damien arrives at Chris's house and goes straight to Regan's room. He is shocked to see Regan tied to her bed, her face deformed and covered in bruises, and her voice loud and growling. Regan declares herself to be the devil and plays with Damien in a variety of ways, opening a drawer next to the bed and speaking to Damien in different languages. She also speaks in the voice of the subway beggar that Damien had previously encountered. Damien is still skeptical, but at the same time, Regan pukes all over him. While Damien leaves Chris's house, Kinderman approaches him and inquires about the possibility that the church's desecration is linked to Burke's death. Kinderman is aware that Damien has suspicions regarding Regan, but his confidentiality as a priest is forbidding him from sharing his suspicions with him. In the next scene, Damien pays another visit to Regan, and this time, he sprays some holy water on her and also records their conversation. When he tells her it's holy water, she writhes in pain and appears to be in a catatonic state, speaking multiple languages. Later, he warns Chris that convincing the bishop to grant permission for the exorcism will be tough. He also confesses that he used tap water instead of holy water before, but is shocked to see Regan behaving differently. With nothing to hide from Damien, Chris confides in him and tells him that she believes Burke was murdered by Regan. Later, after hearing the recordings multiple times, Damien discovers that Regan is really speaking in English. Suddenly, he is interrupted by a call from Sharon, asking him to come to Chris's house to see Regan because she doesn't want Chris to witness what's going on. While they examine Regan's unconscious body, they find the words "help me" on her belly. This makes Damien believe that Regan is possessed. He reluctantly agrees to try to get permission for exorcism from the church. After Damien's request, the bishop agrees to exorcism. He also summons Father Marin to execute the exorcism, with Damien aiding him. According to the bishop, Father Marin will be perfect for the job because he has previously performed successful exorcisms. In the following scene, Father Marin arrives at Chris's house and speaks with Damien about the preparation of exorcism. Regan yells Marin's name from her room upstairs, as if she recognizes him. Meanwhile, he advises Damien against communicating with the demon, reminding him that the demon will confuse and assault them by mixing lies with the truth. When they walk into Regan's room, she instantly starts yelling and cursing them. While Marin and Damien conduct the exorcism ritual, Regan exhibits odd occurrences like levitation, telekinesis, an extremely long tongue, and bizarre vomiting. She curses the priests all the time, laughing evilly and abusing them verbally. Regan continues to speak to Damien in his late mother's voice, which compels him to cry and fall weak. After noticing Damien's failing condition, Marin orders him to go away, insisting that he will do the exorcism on his own. Later, Damien returns to Regan's room and is shocked to find Marin dead on the floor, having suffered a heart attack. Damien tries his best to restore Father Marin's heartbeat but fails. Seeing Damien in pain, Regan happily giggles, making him even angrier. He then grabs her and yells at the demon, asking it to possess him instead of the little girl. Right then, Regan pulls out the medallion from Damien's neck and soon he begins to transform into a demon while Regan returns to her regular self. Before Damien can hurt her, his true self emerges for a single second, and he kills himself by jumping out of Regan's window. He tumbles down the stairs outside the window, much like Burke, and dies. Father Dyer arrives upon the incident by chance and performs the final rites for his mate. In the last scene, it is shown that Chris and Regan are preparing to leave their house. Father Dyer pays them a visit and Chris tells him that Regan has no recollection of the possession or the exorcism. Regan then cheerfully greets him, her gaze drawn to Father Dyer's white collar. She unexpectedly hugs and kisses Father Dyer before leaving. As Chris drives away, she urges the driver to pull over to the side of the road and hand Father Dyer the holy medallion that belonged to Father Damien. Rather than accepting it, Dyer insists Chris keep it. In the final scene, Father Dyer walks away, looking at the stairs where Damien died. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. And before you go, make sure to check out our second channel where we bring to life and uncover plot lines that will leave you with the burning question of, how will it end? Just click the question mark, if you dare. Thanks for watching.